All right. Welcome back, everyone. Remember, this will be our last discussion. Crazy to think this semester has gone by so quickly. So many bumps along the road. I'm glad that most of us have tried to stick it out. We've been completing our work, we've been doing stuff. That's good. A couple of due dates. Remember 8.1 and 8.3. Those homeworks are going to be due next class by midnight. Next quote class, Wednesday, but not actually having class. That mutual fund Excel assignment, our last Excel assignment, that one's going to be due tonight by midnight. We said this was pretty similar to a couple of different Excels we built several lectures ago when we started introducing this more advanced finance stuff. So please, you can use that lecture as a guide. Remember, your formula sheet for the final exam is in Canvas under the reviews section. Your final is going to be 1 day only. It is only Wednesday. It is only one attempt. I cannot give you more than one attempt on the final. We will not have class on Wednesday. If we were still in class, I would not be lecturing the same day I give you a final exam or a midterm exam. So I feel like this is appropriate since I'm not giving you multiple days. I will not give any extensions on the final exam. If you can't take the final Wednesday and you know that, you need to let me know now. If you come at me Thursday, hey, Mr. Beckner, I didn't take the final because I forgot and I wasn't paying attention. That sucks. Pay attention. Take the final by Wednesday or get a 0 on it. There will be a, what did I set it as? I don't want to lie. Hold on, I'm going through my brain. 2.5 hour time limit. So I'm giving you a little more time than the midterm. I think I did 2 hours on the midterm. I'm going to do 2.5 for the final just to give you a little more time. It's not going to be much longer, if at all. It should be the same length. It's going to be 20 questions. The review, remember, the midterm review for chapters 1 through 4, as well as the midterm, that's going to cover more than half of this test. So there's probably going to be like 13 or so questions from the midterm material, and then only maybe 6, 7, somewhere in that ballpark, maybe even up to 8 questions from chapters 5, 6, 7, excuse me, 5, 6, 8, and 9. So I am still building our review. I was planning to have it ready by this morning. I was not able to achieve that because of my other classes, and I'm working on something that's not even for this semester, but it has to be done by today. Excuse me, tomorrow, actually. Not that you care. So I'm going to have that review no later than 5 p.m. today. I expect to have it done by 3, but I didn't want to have written down 3 p.m. just in case something comes up because I have to run an errand. It will be significantly shorter than the midterm review. The midterm review was like 50 questions, I want to say. This one is only going to be 10 or 20. So this will be a review of chapter 5 through 8, maybe 1 or 2 questions from chapter 9 if it's something that we can handle, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, that should be it. And then please remember that you need to get your grade requests in. Now, normally the way this works is we take finals and then you submit final grades 24 hours later. I have been told, though, that students are allowed to request an A, B, C grade of a certain date, up to a certain date. My faculty members are telling me one date. My students are telling me a different date, and those dates do not agree. So I don't know which one is true. I would say it's probably the one going to the students because y'all have been getting information before us faculty members, which is extremely sad, but such is life. So I'm going to guess that y'all's is probably accurate. Now, what does this mean? Well, the date that a student has told me is after 24 hours after a final exam. So I don't want to put in grades and end up having 5 or 6 students all of a sudden, I would have given them pass fail grades and then 5, 6 emails or my form updates, whatever, and it says, hey, Bob wants an A grade. Well, I already put his grade in as a pass plus grade. So then that's a ton of paperwork. So I'm trying to avoid that. So again, the whole point of this conversation is I'm not going to have final grades in 24 hours after the exam. And that is because of the request system and the date that I am guessing to be true, which I'm not going to say out loud. You've read it in your emails. If you didn't, read your dang emails. I'm getting a lot of emails right now from students who are just not paying attention to things, whether it's, and I'm not saying this class, I'm just getting emails from students. Hey, Mr. Beckner, can I get an extension? I didn't see that the due date was the 5th. Yeah, you did. I said it 3 times in class. And again, this is not us. You had it emailed. The date was staring you in the face in my math lab. It was in the videos, et cetera, et cetera. There was no reason for people to have missed the dates. You have to watch my lectures. If you're not watching the lecture, that's on you. So finals will be Wednesday. I'll calculate your averages. And then I'll have to wait for what I believe to be the final submission for students to request an A, B, C, D, F. Again, if you email me personally and say, I want an A, B, C, that means nothing. You have to click the link you've been emailed, submit that form, which should go to Canvas, and then at some point, I'll get a thing that generates who wants A's, B's, and C's, and who wants P pluses, P minuses, and W's. If you email me requesting something, I'm not going to adhere to it. I'm only going to adhere to the official list, because that way, 1 year or 2 years from now, when a student has their grade changed because this wasn't in an official request, they just said, oh, Mr. Beckner, can I get an A? And I say, yeah, sure. And then a year later, people in the documents office are looking for your official form that you never submitted. They don't see it, so then they go back and give you a P minus or a P plus or a W or whatever, and that's going to screw things up. So I'm trying to avoid that happen. So you need to pay attention and do as I request, because paperwork sucks for all of us. Getting a grade change a year or 2 years from now sucks, and I don't know if that's going to happen. I've seen weirder things happen. All right, so my rants are done. If you have any questions, per usual, please email me, please email me, please email me. Please start studying for this. There's not going to be any extensions. You should see your final grade posted in the SIS by Monday, once all requests are official, once I then have the grades done as they should be. Remember, if you do not request an A, B, C, D grade, this class will not affect your GPA even if you fail it, which gives you a W or a WC, whatever they're calling it. All right, so let's pick up where we left off in chapter 9. And we said we did not start this chapter in order. We started with 9.5, talking about mortgages, which are supposed to be our, quote, good debt. We're up here. So we gave 2 scenarios, the 15-year mortgage, the 30-year mortgage. We said they're not the only scenarios that exist. And we showed the math as to why it appears at first glance that a 15-year mortgage would be better, because you end up saving, in this example, $100,000 in interest. But then we talked about how we could throw that money into like a retirement style plan and end up making even more money because of that, because the retirement plans in theory are giving us 7-8% interest, whereas our mortgages are 3 to 4% interest. And the basic principle is you want to put your money where the higher rate is, which is why we say pay off credit cards, because those are 18 to 24%. So that word that we related to a retirement plan was an annuity. I may not have said it yet, actually, but what if you invested that 462? You just see it in the calculator. That's what it was. I knew the word was thrown somewhere. So we'll talk about that officially in just a few minutes. But we ended up getting a whole lot of money from depositing the difference between the 15-year and the 30-year mortgage payment by investing that for 15 years. But we also got a lot of money by paying off the home in 15 years and then just dumping the whole rest of the mortgage into the market for 15 more years, but not nearly as much money. The 30-year scenario was arguably better. Again, not financial advice, just educational numbers. So we said that for those reasons, most people would agree the 30-year scenario is better. But if you just hate debt, you absolutely hate it, you don't want it to be a part of your life, then you get the 15-year mortgage, and then you spend the next 15 years investing in the stock market super heavily, and then you still end up with $500,000 from it anyways. These are your decisions. Investment rates are speculative, educational purposes only. Also, if you don't want to own your home, you can rent. Renting is a great option for a lot of people because, hey, you might not have to do yard work. If your roof starts leaking and you have to replace it, well, that's $10,000 or more, or less, depending on your home. but I'd say average of 10 grand. And if you don't have 10 grand, that means you're going to go get another loan, or maybe you're just going to deal with leaky roofs for a couple of years. Or maybe you put a new giant bay window in your house and that's 4 grand, or, there's all sorts of home repairs. Whereas if you're renting, you don't have those financial burdens. There's cons to renting as well. A lot of people will say that if you're going to live somewhere less than 7 years, you should rent. If it's more than 7 years, you should own. That 7-year value is, I'm not going to say arbitrary, but speculative. It depends on where you live, how you treat your home, all sorts of different things. If you live in an area like Portland, where their values are skyrocketing every year, I would say you're going to break even in like 3 years, maybe even 4 years, because your home is gaining value rapidly. If you live in Portsmouth, which is the abyss of real estate, and some of us, maybe your teacher's pointing at himself, will always regret buying in Portsmouth because value just does not increase at all for the past 12 years. um, you know, then it might take you longer than 7 years to make it really worth owning versus renting. So lots of different reasons to rent instead of owning, but lots of reasons to own versus rent. Again, this is up to you. One last thing I want to talk about with mortgages before moving on to credit cards is that all of these were done with an assumed fixed rate of, I did these numbers on 4.25 and 4.75, even though I said, and I didn't save it, current rates are close to like 3.25 and 3.5. Now, if you get a fixed rate mortgage, which is what we recommend, those rates are locked. If you get a 30-year mortgage, you're paying 3.5% interest this year, you're paying 3.5% interest on year 30. That will never change. Your mortgage payment never changes. Your taxes change, especially in Portsmouth, because they need more money every single year because they don't necessarily know how to run things. And they just take all our money and run with it. Oh, I could say things, but it's being recorded, so I'm not going to say things that I'd normally say in class. It's an operation is what it is. So an adjustable rate mortgage, and anyone who knows anything about the great mortgage crisis of 2008 that crashed, that killed our economy for several years, it is because people were getting what are known as adjustable rate mortgages, the abbreviation being an ARM, adjustable rate mortgage. And it says, okay, you're going to pay a super low interest rate right now for like 3 or 4 or 5 years. But after a certain time, we can change your rate. We can adjust it. So maybe you're paying 2% this year. That's awesome. Give me that mortgage. I want a 2% mortgage. But then 4 years later, they bump it up 1%. And then after that period has gone through where they can't adjust your mortgage, they adjust it every year. And guess what? Usually they bump it up as much as they can in a year. So legally, maybe they can bump it up 1%. So year 5, now you're at 3%. You're at 6. Now you're at 4%. Then you're at 5%. Then you're at 6%. Then you're at 7%. Then 8%. And they have a legal cap, but it's significantly higher than what you started at. It's usually 5 to 10% higher. So your mortgage might be affordable at 2%, but then 8 years later, when you're paying a 9% mortgage or an 8% mortgage, it's no longer affordable to you because you have a state job that's not giving you raises every year. Your teacher's pointing at himself again, probably. So you're supposed to at least get an inflation raise every year. That doesn't happen. So 10 years down the line, you're making less than you were before when you account for inflation. Again, maybe your teacher's pointing at himself. Now, he's not pointing at himself about an adjustable rate mortgage. Your teacher knows better than that. But your teacher doesn't know better than getting a state job. So that's what happened. People were issuing all these adjustable rate mortgages in 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. And then after 4 or 5 years, that fixed rate ends and it starts getting bumped up 1%, and then another percent, and another percent. And all these people can't afford their homes anymore. Also, we had massive overvaluation of homes in that period of time for multiple reasons that we don't have the time to discuss. And then just all of a sudden, everything crashed all at once. If you want to see a great movie talking about that, go check out The Big Short. It's fascinating. You might learn something. I was actually just thinking about watching it again. Unfortunately, some people have no free time in their lives, so I don't get to watch TV. Okay, so what do we learn from this? Stay away from an adjustable rate mortgage unless you're going to pay off your house in 5 years. If you can pay off your house in 5 years, do whatever you want, but I still would never say take an adjustable rate mortgage. Fixed is the winner. That's the winner. Okay, credit cards. Oh man, do I have a love-hate relationship with credit cards. I hate them for the average American, which is 90% of us, unfortunately, but I love them for me. And I only say that I'm in the 10% not for financial reasons, but for knowledge reasons. I know how to use them. I know that the credit card companies lie to all of us constantly. It is insane what they will lie about and how many rumors are spread that are false. So I would love to be in class and say, all right, show of hands, how many of you think that you need to have a balance on your credit card every month? So balance, it rolls over and you end up paying interest on. And then generally over half the class raises their hands and they're all wrong. The best thing you can do with a credit card is have a $0 balance at the end of each month. Pay it off every month. You can use it. You can charge $100. You can charge $1,000. You can charge $1 million on your credit cards if you have that much credit available to you. But as long as you pay it off every month, that is the best thing you can do for yourself. Because your credit score is a product, and I don't mean product as in multiplication. It's based off of several different factors, and one of them is your credit utilization ratio. So in other words, how much you're using to how much you have. So if you're using all your credit, that's bad because your utilization ratio is 1, and you're going to have the worst possible credit score on that factor. Again, on that particular detail. It doesn't say your credit score just drops to nothing. It says whatever chunk that takes up is going to drop to nothing. So maybe all the other factors of your credit score say you should have a 700, but because you're utilizing your entire credit, maybe that brings you down to a 600, your credit line, that is. So first of all, if you can pay off your credit cards every single month, do so. Never pay 1 penny of interest to a credit card company unless you absolutely have to, unless you are in an emergency situation, which right now, maybe some of us are in these emergency situations. Credit cards are our last line of defense, against losing our homes, foreclosing, bankrupting, something like that. And then you do what you got to do. That's another scenario. At least that's an emergency that keeps us in our homes. Another issue with credit cards, the minimum payment trap. So now I'm actually on the notes. I was just thinking out loud at first. So the minimum payment trap, first of all, your annual percent rates on credit cards, usually in the ballpark of 15 to 20, maybe even 24% for weirder cards or if you just have bad credit. That's a very high number. That's higher than most people are going to get on their retirement accounts when they average everything out. That's higher than any mortgage you're ever going to get. That's higher than your student loans. Credit cards are the worst kind of debt. And if you are a person who has no control over how much you're spending, that credit card, oh, I got $10,000 in credit, I'm just going to go use 5,000 of it to go get me a new couch and to go get fancy things and this and that and this and that and this and that and just a bunch of, maybe quote junk. And now you got $5,000 in credit. Well, that $5,000 in 1 month is going to cost you a significant chunk of change. And you might go, well, it's not that much. That's not that much. Let's pull up our calculator. I have one here. So that's not a calculator. This is a calculator. So remember, on the short term only, everything boils back to simple interest. So if you've got a $5,000 balance, that's 50,000, 5,000, and you're paying, let's just keep it 20% APR. So times 0.2 divided by 12. So this will be 1 month's worth of interest. This is our balance times the monthly interest rate. That says you're paying $83 in interest. Now, if you do that for 12 months, now you're at 5,083. The next month, you're going to pay a little more interest, then a little more interest, then a little more interest. Even if you didn't pay a little more interest, let's say you just paid this 83 every month. You just paid the interest off. So that means you would get that 12 times, which means you would have $1,000 in interest that you're paying off that year on a $5,000 balance. That is insane. By borrowing $5,000, you're going to end up paying $1,000 in 1 year if you were just paying the interest off every single month. Somebody asked something. Thank you. Someone says, stay away. I'm dealing with credit card debt now. Absolutely. Stay away. Stay away. Now, again, I love credit cards, and I'll explain why. But for the average American, the bad. You need education to understand how to use them. You get to my side of the 10%, and then you use them to have the credit card companies pay you. All right, so $1,000 in interest just for 1 year. And if you're paying $83 a month, you're just paying down the interest. You would, in theory, never pay off that credit card. Now, credit card companies have a minimum balance that you have to pay, a minimum payment, excuse me, which is the interest plus a little of the principal, so that in theory, eventually you do pay it off. And this will change from company to company. A lot of them operate under you have to have it paid off in 5 years, but some of them operate under a 10-year quantity. And then you end up paying tons and tons and tons of interest. So you can use Excel to do a month-by-month basis on this. You can add the interest, you can subtract your payment. It's very easy, just like we've done before. There's also a website that you can use, and I have it pulled up. I have the link later. It's right here, bankrate.com/calculator/credit card/blah, blah, 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 credit card payoff calculator. If you just Google credit card payoff calculator or credit card calculator, it's like the second, third, or fourth link you'll see. So a minimum payment. So let's go to this problem. A $2,000 balance at 18%, if you make a payment of $50 a month, it's going to take you 62 months to pay off. And I'll show you where these numbers come from in a hot second. And you end up paying $1,077 in interest. You borrowed $2,000 and you're going to end up paying $1,100. That's more than 50% of what you borrowed. So for taking a loan for 5 years, you're going to end up paying 50% of that loan back to a bank in interest. Why does that suck? Think back to your home when you were borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you borrowed that for 15 years, you don't even pay half. Now, if you borrow it for 30 years, you end up paying, 80% in interest on that particular loan. Lower right now if you locked in a mortgage today with good credit. But that's 15 and 30 years, not 5. That's insane that you're going to pay that much as a rate over 5 years. So how did I get those numbers? All right, $2,000 balance, 18%, $50 payment. So here's that website I mentioned. It's quite a simple process. Credit card payoff calculator, not a lot of inputs. Credit card balance, $2,000. Credit card interest rate, 18% APR. And you can either put a payment per month or a desired months to pay off. So if I said, I want to pay this off in 12 months, I would just put a 12 here and nothing on the payment per month and hit calculate. Did I not type 12? I thought I did. So if I wanted to pay this off in a year, I got to pay $183 a month. And then it shows that I'll pay $200 in total interest. I'll pay the $2,000 in total principal, meaning it will cost me $2,200 to pay off this $2,000 air quote loan. But that's not what I looked at initially. So let's take that away and put it back to the $50 per month. Calculate. Here we go. At making a $50 a month payment, it takes 62 months to pay off. You pay your $2,000 balance, you pay $1,077 in interest. So that interest is more than 50% of what you borrowed. Now, this right here, this bar chart, this is the total that you paid. So it's saying that in the total of almost $3,100 that you paid, in that total, 65% went towards what you borrowed and 35% went to the bank for that loan. But again, in terms of just a percent of what you borrowed, you are paying back more than 50% of what you borrowed. And then you can play with this. You can say, okay, well, what if I make $100 payments instead? What if I make twice as large of a payment? How many months will that take to pay off? So we go from 62, you might inherently think 31 months, because that's half of 62, doubling the payment half the time, but check this out. It's less than 31 months. It's 7 less months, in fact. That's a half a year less. If you can double your payment, you get that card paid off in a half a year, just a little more than that technically, less. Also, instead of paying $1,100 in interest, you only pay $400 in interest, a savings of $700. Pay off your credit cards as soon as possible. I don't necessarily suggest that you ever make an extra penny of a payment towards your mortgage, but that's if you're going to be investing that. If you are not willing to invest, then pay off your mortgage sooner than later. But if you're willing to invest, take that 30-year mortgage and roll with it. There's other reasons to do that as well, because due to inflation, your dollar is going to be worth, you're going to be making more dollars 30 years later, but your mortgage is still the same. So maybe now you're making twice as much money, but your mortgage payment never went up. Your taxes went up, your insurance went up, but your mortgage, the big chunk of it, never goes up unless you refinance. And don't refinance unless you're going to get a lower interest rate or you have an emergency. Never refinance at a higher interest rate unless you have an emergency and there's no other choice in your life. Okay, so what if we did $200 a month? So we just graduated college, we finally got our big boy or big girl job, and we can afford to pay off our debts a little quicker. So instead of just making that $50 payment, now all of a sudden I'm making $200. Look at this, only 11 months. So again, you might think it would take 12 months, but it's 11. And now you only pay $183 in interest. Okay, well, what if you say, oh, I've got an emergency, I can only make $25 payments. Look at this. Your payments are not enough to cover the accumulated interest. Try increasing the payments. This is less than a credit card company would ever legally be allowed to charge you per month. Let's see if we can find the number, kind of hone in on it. All right, if you pay $40 a month, that would take 94 months. 94 months, that's a lot of years. What if we were making $35 payments? Now it's taking 131 months to pay off. That's 11 years. Look at how much interest we're now paying. If for some reason we made $35 payments, if a bank allowed us to only pay $35 a month, you would pay more in interest than you borrowed, and it's going to take you 11 years to pay that off. No, stop it. Don't. Bad. Credit card companies are evil. They are terribly evil. They want your money and they take it faster than anyone else. So I love this website. Let's just Google, let's see which one it is if I Google credit card calculator. And that's an ad. Here we go. First one that's not an ad. Same website we had. So in Canvas, I'm going to give you a document that has a whole bunch of financial websites and resources in addition to the Chapter 9 notes that you already have up there. And it'll have these links up there to the credit card calculator, this annuity calculator, which we saw last time, which we'll see again today, and the mortgage calculator that we saw last time. Okay, back to our notes. So tips for good credit card use. Why does your teacher like credit cards? How does he use them? And how could you maybe learn from that? They can help establish a good credit score, which in turn helps you get lower APRs on loans, on other credit cards, car loans, mortgages, student loans, anything, equity lines of credit, home equity lines of credit, HELOCs, which there's a lot of people like those. A lot of people hate those. I'm not going to give my opinion, and I'm not even going to talk about them any more than that. I'm just going to say that HELOCs are a thing. But a person who's got a credit score of, say, 600 is going to get a vastly different loan in terms of an APR than a person who's got a credit score of 800. 800 is a phenomenal credit score. The highest it can go is 850. 600 is a pretty mediocre score. It's not a great score, and that's when you're under 700, that's when you tend to take these higher APRs. So good credit card use establishes a credit score. In fact, if you never have a credit card or any type of loan, you have no credit score. And no credit score is worse than bad credit because you're not even going to get a loan at all. If you never get a credit card, if you never get a student loan, if you never get a car loan, if you just go and try and buy a home, they're going to say, we can't give you a home because you've never established credit. You don't have a credit score. And you would think, oh, I've never used credit cards. That means I'm perfect with money. But they don't have a history of that in theory. Now, this is changing. This is a dynamic situation we're in because they are changing. They're doing like a modified FICO score for some people where now if you have never used credit cards, they can use your bank records to make sure you've been paying off other things on time, to make sure you're keeping a balance in your savings and or checking accounts. They can establish credit scores. I do not know any of the detail behind that, except that it just came into effect like a year ago. It's pretty new. So there's some changes happening for the better, in my opinion. But I don't know how effective they are yet. So just do your own research on that before you go saying, hey, I don't need a credit card because they have a modified FICO score now. Grains of salt there. So how do you get good credit? First of all, get a credit card, use it once a month, once every other month, and pay it off in full. If you don't ever use the credit card, they will eventually close it. And you need a credit card that's been open for a long amount of time. So one of the factors of your credit score is how long have you had your longest credit card open. So if you just get a card, use it for 6 months and close it, and then get another card, use it for 12 months and then close it, you don't have a credit linked history. If you have a credit card, use it once a month, maybe once every other month, maybe once every 6 months, and you pay it off in full, do that for 7 years, you have a very extended length of credit. So once you hit, several years, and I think the maximum's 15 or 20 years somewhere before it stops benefiting you. So get a credit card, open it, use it minimally, and keep it forever. Don't close it. Have one of those. Paying off your cards every month and on time, never paying a cent in interest. That is a strong benefit. By making your payments on time, that's another factor of your credit score. Depending on where your score is and how long you've been established, if you miss one payment, even by a day, if the credit card company then runs that you have missed your payment, even by a day, your credit score can drop up to 100 points, usually in the ballpark of 70 to 80. And again, this depends on your credit score, how long you've had credit and all that stuff. But I'd say for most of us in our younger years with less of a credit score, less credit history, missing one payment can drop you that much. Now, notice I said the bank has to process it. The banks don't always process it after a day. They don't always process it after 2 weeks. Usually they take more than a month to actually ping your credit, but not all of them. And I can't tell you which ones take longer than others because I don't know. So maybe you get lucky and you're 15 days late. You'll still get hit with the fee, but maybe it doesn't ping your score. Maybe you're unlucky and you're 2 days late and they've already pinged your score. That sucks. So a lot of credit cards also offer reward points because the credit card companies are very competitive now. So one company said, hey, we'll give you 1% cash back, which means if you spent $100, then they'll give you $1 back. So then another credit card company says, forget that, we'll give you 2% back. Another card company says, forget that, we'll give you 5% back if you're spending this at the grocery store, or 10% back if you're spending it at Old Navy, or you get the idea. You've probably seen these, and if you haven't, do some research on it. But here's the thing, if they give you 5% cash back, if you're paying 18% APR and you're keeping a balance every month and you're paying their interest, that 5% cash back did nothing for you. The 1% cash back did absolutely nothing for you. But if you pay these off every month, which means you never pay interest because they give you a 30-day grace period on your payments before interest is actually charged, so you can actually make money off of this. You get one of these 5% cards. Let's say you have $10,000 worth of expenses every year. You charge them all on credit cards. You're going to get 5% of that back. So you have $10,000 worth of expenses that you're able to charge on a credit card, and you get 5% back. That means that's $500 that you'll get back over a year. That's nice. But if you're paying interest, the whole thing was pointless, because if you're paying 18% interest, let's just say you paid it all at once. That means the credit card company is making $3,200 off of you, meaning you still lost money. So the points are only beneficial if you're paying off the card every month. A lot of cards will offer sign-on bonuses. Now, this is getting weaker and weaker every year because you've got a lot of people, like somebody's pointing at the teacher right now, who manipulate these to end up making some money. So you can say, oh, well, let me get credit card A that's going to give me $200 cash back if I spend $500 in 3 months. And then I'll close that. And let me get credit card B. It's going to offer me $500 cash back if I spend $3,000 in 3 months. And then let me close that and get credit card C. And you might be able to make $2,000 in a year. Now, at some point, they're going to stop offering you credit cards because if you open too many, first, opening credit cards drops your score a little. It's not as significant as missing a payment, but you will lose anywhere between 5 to 20 points every time you open a credit card. But 6 to 12 months later, that effect goes away. But if you start opening too many, they're going to not offer you anymore. It's some companies won't let you open a card if you've had more than 5 in the past 24 months. Some won't let you open a new card with them if it's been 1 in 12 months. There's all sorts of variables there, so I'm not giving any concrete numbers here. But there is a limit to the number of cards you can open in a 1 to 2 year period. Now, I said, one of those I mentioned, hey, get $500 for free if you spend $3,000 in 3 months. Oh, sweet. I'm going to go get a brand new 4K TV. I'm going to buy a computer. I'm going to get those new sweet rims I've been wanting. That's not how that works. You buy things that you need. You only get that credit card if you know there's $3,000 of normal expenses because you've done a budget and you understand your average monthly expenses, or maybe you know there's a new big expense coming up. Maybe you got to slap that new bay window on the front of your house. It's going to cost you $3,000 or $4,000. Hey, the dude who's doing this will let me run it on a credit card. Let me get a brand new credit card that says if you spend $3,000, you get $500 for free. Slap it on the credit card, pay it off immediately so you don't pay interest. So you got to have that cash set aside. The point being here, then you get $500 of that back, and you just got a deep discount on that bay window. Maybe your teacher's pointing to himself right now. But again, if you don't have that $3,000, you don't get the $3,000 credit card to spend $3,000 on it. The sign-on bonuses, if you've got bad credit, you're not getting those offers. If you're brand new, you're probably not going to get a good offer. I've seen ones for students who will be like, here's a free $50 or $100, and that's a great one to start with. That's a good, students first credit card. I didn't want to say baby's first credit card because that sounds like I'm being condescending, and trust me, I'm not. Students first credit card, a starter card, if you will. So you only get those if you plan on spending the minimum amount quoted. Also, if you've noticed, this is a lot more just a real life lecture than anything having to do with homework problems necessarily. This is important knowledge that you need. So don't just casually spend. And again, I'm not telling you what to do with your life. If that's the choices you make, those are the choices you make. You're just going to have less money in retirement. That's all it is. I thought I had a website for this. Maybe I put it in another article. I'm gonna pause my screen for a second. I'll be back. I want to find a file. Here we go. All right. So here's that document I mentioned, websites to help you with your finances. I had you build a budget in Excel for yourself. Some of you did a good job with it. Some of you, but you don't have to use that. You can, and some of you might. Me personally, I have an Excel budget that I use for every month, but there are websites for this, and everydollar.com is not the only one. There are several others I can't think of off the top of my head because I got 10 million things going on in my brain right now. But I mean, if you just Google websites to help with a budget, you'll come up with 6 or 7. I think mint.com is another one of them that's pretty good. But this is a great budgeting website. There's that credit card payoff calculator. Here's the mortgage calculator we showed. Here's the annuity calculator we showed, which we might look at more today. Some great annuity websites to get your mutual funds, your stocks, ETFs, options, whatever. Vanguard, Fidelity, E-Trade, Robinhood. Personally, I use Fidelity and Robinhood. Robinhood, I literally just started. Fidelity's been around forever. I'm a big fan of them. Robinhood has changed the game immensely. Investing has never been so easy or cheap, in fact, and not just because stocks are plummeting right now because we're in a weird economy. And they're not all plummeting. Just the airlines, the hotels, things like that. Tech has pretty much bounced back for the moment, but I'm not saying it'll keep growing. That's speculation. But Robinhood, it used to be that, all right, you want to do a trade that's going to cost you $5 or $7 or whatever a website chooses to charge. Robinhood said, forget that noise. We're doing free, no fee trading. So everyone went to Robinhood. So guess what? Vanguard, Fidelity, E-Trade, they had to start offering that. And then there's been other bonuses that Robinhood has offered that then other companies have had to come back and do the same thing for. Things like fractional shares, like, Amazon costs what, $1,300 or $2,300? I think it's $2,300 right now for a share. If you don't have $23, then you can't buy Amazon. Well, now people allow fractional shares, and you can just say, I want $400 of Amazon. So you'll get 0.2 shares of Amazon. And that might sound bad, but Amazon typically grows, so that 0.2 of a share could still get you some money. So there's several to check out. There are some other investment apps like Acorns and Stash that are a lot more modernized. You can do those fractional shares. Acorns, you've got this thing called a roundup feature where, let's say you go to Chick-fil-A and you get your $4 sandwich, it's $4.10. You can hit the roundup button on that app and it'll charge you $4.10 goes to Chick-fil-A, and then it puts 90 cents into your investments. You might say, well, that's nothing, 90 cents. Yeah, but if you're going to Chick-fil-A every day, and 90 cents adds up every day. You know, if you did that, say, every other day, 180 times basically $1, that's 180 bucks that you just invested that you might not have before. You might have just taken that 90 cents and threw it at something else. So where is it? So I love NerdWallet. They've got all sorts of different articles about this credit card is going to be good for a while, other finance things. So check out NerdWallet. In fact, this one was a NerdWallet link. How your credit score is calculated. You know, a lot of people might not like Wells Fargo, but they have some good numbers available. And they do a donut chart. Could have been just a regular pie chart. Who cares? Colors. All right, so 35%, the biggest chunk, is your payment history. Payment history involves your late payment. That's why if you miss one payment, your credit score goes down so significantly, because it is the most significant portion of your credit score. 30%, current loan and credit card debt. This right here, this 30% is your utilization ratio. It is the ratio of how much you're using to how much you have. Now, a student who's got $500 in credit, because they're not going to give, you know, the first time you have a credit card, you're not going to give you a lot. $500 is pretty average. Now, if you charge $500 on that card, you're at max capacity. And if you don't pay it off, that means you're utilizing 100% of your credit score, which means 30% of your score is going to be as low as possible. Now, if you have been around for a while and you have, say, instead of $500, maybe $50,000 worth of credit, which is not unheard of. A person with an awesome credit score of, you know, 750, 800, who's been established for a while, has very little debt, they can end up having several cards with maybe $50,000 worth of credit available. And maybe they never use a penny of it. Maybe they just use it every month and pay it off every month. It's just there as a safety net. So now that person goes and puts $500 on the card, and maybe that month they don't pay it off, but they are only using 500 out of 50,000. So instead of using 100%, they are only using 1% of their credit. So that means that $500 is not even going to have an effect on that chunk, that 30%. It's going to go down maybe a point, which is nothing. 15% is the length of your history. That's why I said you need one card that you have, you use occasionally, and you never get rid of. I wish I had known that a decade ago. I had a card for maybe 6 or 7 years. And I was like, I haven't really been using it. Let me just let it roll. And the company closed it for me. And then I saw a credit score drop of like 25 points, I think. And that wasn't super significant, but I didn't know at the time that closing your oldest account would cause a dip. So I think my oldest card right now is like 12 years old. I'd have one that would be almost 20 years old if I hadn't. I think it'd be 18. So it could start paying taxes. Sorry, terrible joke. All right, not that age means you pay taxes. You can pay taxes if you're under 18. That was silly. All right, and then 10% is the type of credit that you have. So is all of your credit just credit cards? Is all of your credit just mortgages? All of your credit card just car loans? So it's actually better to have varied credit, but that doesn't say, hey, you have to have a mortgage and a car payment and a credit card. It's a small chunk. It's only 10%. So if you don't have a car loan, that's not going to really affect you. If you don't have a mortgage, that's not really going to affect you. If you don't have all three, that's going to affect you a little. And then 10% is that new credit. That's what I was talking about. Hey, if you are applying for a lot of new cards frequently, you're going to take little hits that build up. And then these go away eventually as well. Like I said, the new credit, 6 to 12 months, it stops having an effect. Payment history, I think it's like 5 years later. If you have no missed payments, then that will go back to perfect. But I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. Your FICO score is between 300 and 850. Anything under 600 is trash, basically. 6 to 7 is good. 7 to 8 is great. Over 800 is basically perfect. It takes a lot of effort to get a score over 800. A lot of perfect payments, a lot of utilizing things right, a lot of not maintaining balances. And yeah, credit cards, they can be good, but they can suck. I don't like debit cards. I don't like debit cards. Until recently, most companies, most banks, if your debit card was stolen, let's say you had $10,000 in that account and this person charges $10,000 worth of stuff. That $10,000 of yours could have been in limbo for up to a year, anywhere from 6 months to 12 months. That's money you wouldn't have access because they stole your money. Credit is not your money. So if you have a credit card that gets stolen, and they charge $10,000 worth of stuff on your credit card, you know what you do? You call up the credit card company and you say, hey, dude, someone stole my card. I didn't make these purchases. They did. And they go, that's cool. All right, we got you. It's gone. New credit card isn't going to be in the mail with a new number in 7 to 10 days. And that's it. But in the past, that debit card, they're going to go, ooh, that sucks. They took $10,000 that were yours. We're going to have to kind of do some research and make sure that everything's legit. And eventually, once we've gone through all this paperwork and all this research, we'll find $10,000 and we'll give it back to you. Now, I have heard that things are a lot better in 2020 than they were in 2010. But I don't want to definitively say that. All I'll say is your teacher does not have one of the two in his wallet, either a debit card or a credit card. And given how I've talked previously, you can probably guess which one I keep in my wallet all the time, just in case anyone ever mugs me. I have had my credit cards stolen, not physically, but over the internet. I don't know, 6, 8 times. My better half, more than 10 times. We've never paid a penny. You know, it's a 5-minute, 10-minute conversation on the phone, and that's it. Debit card would have been more of a headache. Again, I'm not saying don't have a debit card. I'm not saying don't have credit cards. I'm not saying have either of them. I'm saying make your decisions based on education. I wish they taught this stuff in high school because it's important. But what are you going to do? That's what I'm here for. All right. So let's go back to early in chapter 9. Now that we've talked about credit cards, back to investments, annuities, this thing that we discussed very briefly in terms of the name, but we have discussed in concept with frequency in this course. So an annuity is different than just a regular savings account. So, excuse me, if you heard that. We've done retirement plans where we said, all right, Bob's got 30 grand. He puts it into an account and he sits on that 30 grand for 30 or 40 years. I wouldn't call that an annuity. It technically can be in an annuity, but an annuity is the name for something when you're going to add payments on a regular basis. So you're adding $100 a month, your Starbucks cup of coffee every day. You're older, you're in your 40s, so you're putting $500 a month in, whatever. Or you just really want to have a blasted out retirement, so you're putting $1,000 every month because you make a lot of money and you don't feel the need to spend it while you're young. Make fire while you can, as they say. So an annuity is when we're adding it on a regular basis. So I want to pull up our formula sheet for a hot second that you'll have for your final. So we've dealt with the top 4 formulas: compound interest annually, compound interest in times per year, a present value needed for a goal, APY. All 4 of these formulas had to do with a one-time deposit. The letter P for principal stands for one-time deposit. When we use the word annuity, this is for multiple deposits every year. So instead of using P, we use payment. So this payment is our monthly or quarterly or daily payment that we're adding into the annuity. It's not a mortgage payment. We're not paying someone else off. This payment is us adding to a pile for retirement later or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be retirement. So these formulas are a little more complicated, admittedly. Not going to throw them on the final exam, but you do have access to the homework and can try them out. So they still are just based on an annual interest rate, an amount of time, a number of times compounding, and then what you're putting in every month or every quarter or every day or every year or whatever it might be. So when we use the phrase annuity, we're talking about an account where you're adding to the pile constantly, frequently. This is a weak definition of annuity, to be fair. Retirement plans don't have to be called an annuity. You can get a 401k, you can get a Roth IRA, you can get a traditional IRA, you can get a brokerage, and then you can get an annuity. They're all annuities, but some things are just called an annuity. So there's a little bit of a shade of gray there, but they're all the basic same type of thing. A lot of people will call an annuity where, I don't want to phrase this, it's more like a pension where you just get, you're going to expect a fixed amount no matter what. That's arguable. That's arguable. So there's all sorts of different types of retirement accounts. We've got bonds. Bonds are one of the safest investments, but safe means lower yielding rates. A lot of people will say that you shouldn't really have any money in bonds or very little money in bonds until 10 years within retirement. Some people will say you should have a third of your money in bonds to be safer. Some people say you should have half of your money in bonds to be safer. Depends on how safe or risky you want to be. So a safe person might have half their money in bonds and half their money in in stocks and mutual funds. And that safer person would have felt a lesser hit temporarily when the market had a small little crash a couple months ago. But if they're 25, they got a long time to make that money back up, and they will make that money back up. So it's my opinion, the younger you are, the riskier you should be to net the most money long term. But again, I'm not telling you how to invest. I'm not giving you advice. I'm telling you effects, cause and effect, a causal relationship. IRAs, these are your own personal investment retirement accounts, IRA, if you will, or individual retirement account is really what the I stands for, but nobody cares. So this is something you can go through Fidelity or Acorns or any of the other websites that we listed earlier, like Robinhood, et cetera, E-Trade. And you can say, hey, sign me up for a Roth IRA. And if you go to the website and you see too much information, you go to Google or to YouTube and you say how to sign up with a 401k, I'm sorry, with a Roth IRA on Fidelity. And somebody will give you a step-by-step series of instructions on how to do that. Financial advisors are not necessary in a lot of people's situations. Financial advisors make a lot of money and they don't really care whether you make money or not, honestly. They just care that in the long term, they're making money off of you because they're going to make 5% or 10% off of their customers or 2% or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't have one. Now, if you have a lot of complicated finances, you invested $10 million from grandma or something like that. I said invested, I meant to say inherited. You inherited and want to keep it invested. And, this happens all of a sudden. That's a situation where I'd say, get yourself a financial advisor. But if you've got $10 to your name, and you just want to start learning how to do this on your own, this is a great time. You don't really need a financial advisor. Just, go buy total market funds. Look up what that means. Go buy basic bond funds, buy total market in international, buy US equities. You don't have to just invest in Amazon and just invest in Apple. It's not a great strategy. You might make a ton of money. You might lose it all as well. Mutual funds are safer. So IRAs, you have two different types, Roth and traditional. Roth IRAs have interests that grow tax-free. So when you put your money into a Roth IRA, whatever you put in is what you put in. And then after the 10, 20, 30, 40 years, however much money you gain, you won't pay taxes on. You've already paid taxes on that money. Roth IRAs are awesome for people starting young. Even if you're in your 30s or 40s, a Roth IRA can still be great. Traditional IRAs are quite the opposite. It means you don't pay taxes on the deposit, but you will pay taxes on the interest. So if you're investing at 50 years old, maybe a traditional IRA is a little better for you. If you're making more than like $150,000, you aren't even allowed to get a Roth IRA. And I'm not saying exactly what that number is. I don't have it in front of me. But there is a maximum salary cap to be able to do a Roth IRA because it is better long-term, in my opinion. And I say opinion, but there's probably a reason the government limits it. So maybe my opinion is sound. I'm not saying traditional IRAs are bad. Even if you're 18 or 19 or 20, I mean, you're investing, it's all good. But if you're 18 years old, you're going to make a ton of interest off of the dollars you're putting in now. So it'd be great to have that tax-free. If you're 50 years old, that money isn't going to have the time to explode. So it's less critical to be in a Roth IRA, and a traditional is probably better. Or I don't want to say probably better, might be better. There's a lot of complications to this, though. It has to do with, what are the tax rates like now? What are they going to be like later? You can't predict that at all. You know, what's your salary like now? What's your salary like later? You know, maybe you make a ton of great investments and you're making $100,000 a year now, but then your investments, you can pull out $300,000 a year and not even have an effect on your investments. It just keeps growing. So maybe your salary increases a lot and you don't want to pay taxes on that interest. Maybe it was better to go ahead and pay the taxes on the principal. And you might say, well, how do you not pay taxes on a traditional IRA? My money was taxed when it came out of my paycheck. So what happens is, when you do your taxes in April of every year, you end up getting some of that money back. So maybe you deposit $1,000 into a traditional IRA, maybe you get $100 or $200 that back in your tax return. So that's how you, quote, not pay taxes. 401ks are employee sponsored. There's some varieties to these. There's a 403b for some people. I have one of each because TCC is weird because of a pension system that some of us have. They usually cash match up to a certain number, a certain value. So they might say, all right, for the first $1,000 you put in, we'll match you dollar to dollar. But it's not necessarily dollar to dollar. Maybe they'll say, for every dollar you put in, we'll put 50 cents in. And it doesn't have to be a very large amount. It can be a very small amount. Maybe a certain school that we all know only offers up to $20 matched, and they're doing a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you put in 20, they'll give you 10. If you put in 30, they still only give you 10. If you put in 40, they still only give you 10. Now, again, that's because of that might be because of a pension system. And I won't even talk about whether pensions are good or bad, but there's a reason they're disappearing. I'll just say that. So if you don't have a pension, you'd probably have a better 401k option than that. Put money in 401ks, especially if you've got a 1-to-1 offering, especially if it's a large amount. You need to max that out if you can. Because if they say, hey, if you put in $5,000, we'll put in $5,000, that's $5,000 that you just earned that you weren't going to get. And it might be tax-free, or at least the interest will be tax-free. This right here can make or break your retirement. If you don't have the money to go and do an individual retirement plan through an IRA, whether it's Roth or traditional, attack that 401k first. If you're not offered a 401k, then attack those IRAs. IRAs right now have a limit of like $6,000 a year. 401ks, it's like $19,000 a year that you can invest. Now, you might say, I can't invest $19,000. That's fine. If you can invest $1,000, you can invest $5,000. Do whatever you can. Get that cash match. Let's say you make a boatload of money, or you just have zero expenses. You just live like a hermit. I hope that's not offensive. I never mean to be offensive. I really don't think that should be offensive. If it is, then I apologize, and please replace it with a different word. But let's just say you live and you do nothing. You spend no money. You meditate. You exercise. Whatever. You don't even have internet, which would be a problem right now. Haha. So you're able to invest $20,000 in your 401k. You're able to put $6,000 in your IRA, and you still have more money to invest, and you're not spending it now, so why not invest it? Well, get yourself a brokerage account. Now, this is not going to have any tax benefits. You don't get tax benefits on the deposit. You don't get tax benefits on the interest, but you're still going to get that 7, 8, 9, maybe 10% growth every year if you're investing it properly. Also, with a brokerage account, you don't have age restrictions on when you can pull out the money without penalties. So if you need, let's say you got $100,000 in your brokerage and you have $100,000 in your IRA, and you want to go buy a house and you want to go pay for half of it tomorrow. So you need $100,000 for your down payment. If you pull that from your IRA, you're going to get hit with some insane fees. Insane. If you pull it from your brokerage, you get your $100,000 and that's it. So brokerage accounts don't have to be used for retirement. They can be used for, oh, my kid's about to go to college and I'd like to help him pay for that. Maybe I pull a little from the brokerage. Hey, I need to make a down payment on my house. Maybe I pull that from the brokerage. There's some complications with the IRAs, with the Roth IRAs, you can actually withdraw your deposits and not be hit with fees, but not your interest. So what that means is if you have a Roth IRA, let's say you put in $10,000 and you got $90,000 in interest because you invested awesomely. So you could pull out $10,000 and not be hit with a fee, but any dollar above that, you'll be hit with the fee. So if you want to pull, say, 50,000, you're going to get fined severely, like 10% roughly. If you only pulled out that $10,000 though, no fines, you're okay. And I'm not saying pull money from your retirement accounts. That's kind of a last resort in my opinion, because you want that money in there to be working for you to explode over 30 or 40 years. So that way you can retire on a boat in the Caribbean. All right, 15 minutes. Mutual funds. I've mentioned this before. These are bundles of stocks. So in a 401k, in a Roth IRA, in a traditional IRA, or in a brokerage account, you can buy a share of Amazon, or a share of Apple, or a share of Boeing, or a share of Delta, or a share of Hilton, or multiple shares of them. You can also buy bundles of stocks. So you can go and say, I want to buy everything that's in the S&P 500, which is the top 500 companies of America. Well, you go to Fidelity and you buy ticker symbol FXAIX, which is their equivalent of the S&P 500. So you've just put money into 500 stocks. So now if you buy one share of that, you have a small portion of 500 different companies that have historically done very well. So if you bet on Boeing, and then all of a sudden all the airlines get shut down and your stock drops 80%, that sucks. But if you bought a mutual fund that had Boeing in it and a bunch of other different companies, maybe Boeing drops 80%, but maybe those other companies only drop 20%, you're going to feel that effect significantly less. Mutual funds are safer than individual funds instead of an individual company. Now, am I saying don't invest in individual companies? No. There are people that retire just by putting their money in Apple and Amazon, and they see absolutely bonkers growth. They pull their money out at the right time, and they can retire at 40 years old. But I'm trying to give you a much more common perception of retirement, and that's mutual funds. You buy S&P 500, you buy NASDAQ, you buy Dow, you buy total market funds, which is every single positive American stock out there. You can buy funds that are tech-based only, or medical-based only, or energy-based only. Tech funds have performed phenomenally for the past 10 years. They've returned like 5 to 10% better than the S&P 500. Medical funds, maybe 2 to 5% better. Energy funds, complete trash the past 10 years. They have done nothing but negative returns. And I'm not saying that they won't do better in the future. That's speculation. I'm not speculating in class. All I'm saying is the past 10 years they've sucked. Maybe at some point they turn around. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of oil. Personally, I don't invest in energy, but I like safer energy that will propel us into the 22nd century eventually when we run out of oil, because we will run out of oil eventually. It's going to dry up at some point because fossil fuels are finite. So I know I'm talking about this very quickly. I wish I had more time to talk about this. What you need to take away from this is go to YouTube. What's a Roth IRA? Why should I have an IRA? How to use a 401k? And not just YouTube, Google. You'll find lots of well-educated people willing to educate you. And again, they're not giving financial advice. They're just making you aware of these things. But you need to do some research in this. I probably spend 40 minutes of my day every day just looking into stuff like this, because your retirement is important to you. There are too many people in this world that are going to end up being 65, 67 years old, and all they have is Social Security. Okay, Social Security right now, that's based on your income. It's also a completely broken system because it was meant to help the poor people, and it helps the rich people more because it's proportional to how much money you've made over your life. Also, rich people live longer than poor people on average. There are statistics to back that up. So the rich people make even more money because of that. Systems tend to be broken, though. Come on, buddy, stop that. Sorry, my dog is messing with me. I like your affection, but I got to teach. All right. And now I've gotten distracted. What was I just talking about? Dang it. Yeah, anyways, do your research. That's what I'm saying. Do your research, do your research, do your research. Make educated decisions, because there's statistics out there that say like 85% of people have less than $10,000 to retire on that are 60 years old. Or it'll be like 95% of people 30 or younger have nothing in their retirement plans. And if you're in college, I recommend everyone who's 18 to start trying to put their money into these accounts as soon as possible, because we've seen how that money can explode with 50 years to invest it, and how little we have to put in versus every 10 years we wait, we have to more than double our investment to hit that, whatever our financial goal is, whether it's $1 million, $500,000, $10 million. Every 10 years you wait, you more than have to double your deposit. So start young. Now, if you have any 10, 12% loans, if you're paying off credit card debt right now, then you should be paying off the credit card debt. You should be paying off the loans. If you've got a mortgage, invest. If you just got a car loan that's 3 or 4%, invest. If you have credit card debt, don't invest. Pay that off first. Once that's done, then get to your investments, because that 18 to 20% or 24% is going to be worse than the, again, 7 to 10% you're probably going to get on your individual retirement plans long term on average. And remember, you're going to have bad years. I lost 35% of my retirement money in like 2 weeks back in March. And of course, nobody wants to see that on paper. But things bounce back really quickly, if only temporarily, and now it's not as bad. I've lost maybe, I don't know, 2%, something like that. And then maybe things recover really quickly, and maybe I'm up 50% in a year. Or maybe things are very, very bear-like. Maybe we have a bad market for 3 years, like after the 2008 crisis. And maybe I stay down for a while, but I know that this market is going to explode 10, 20, 30 years later. It always grows, at least in our country. Can't say that for Japan, unfortunately, or a couple others. But our money has always, our total market has grown exponentially over time. So I know that whatever small effect I have now is not going to matter later. All right, so traditional IRA we talked about earlier, the money you put in is tax-free. A Roth IRA, the interest you get is tax-free. We said that earlier. Brokerage account, same information is here. FYI, the minimum age to start withdrawing from your Roth IRA is 59 and a half. There's some shades of gray with that, especially because of coronavirus right now. You also have to start withdrawing at like 71 or 72, somewhere in that ballpark. Again, shades of gray because of Corona. We've talked about the numerous places you can get mutual funds. And again, I can buy S&P 500. I can buy it as a Roth IRA. I can buy it as a traditional IRA. I can buy it as a brokerage. I can buy it as a 401k, depending on how my job offers things. And I can do that all in a Fidelity account, or all in a Robinhood account, or an Acorns account. You can invest into the same thing different ways. You can say, hey, I want this money in the S&P 500 to be in my Roth IRA. And then, hey, I want this pile of money to be in a brokerage just in case I need that sooner than when I retire. You don't just gain money on interest, you also get dividends. Dividends are the profit that a company shares with you because you've invested in them. They said, hey, you gave us a good chunk of money. If we profit, you should profit a little more. Some companies offer awesome dividends. Some offer crummy dividends. Some offer no dividends. Amazon in particular does not offer dividends, but their growth is so awesome, I don't really feel like they need to. I feel like a lot of energy companies offer really good dividends. I don't want to say a lot. Some energy companies offer good dividends, but their interest rates drop. So if the dividends are more than your APR dropping from the company, being worse and worse because oil, then hey, you could still invest in those, but dividend percents change every year, just like your APRs change every day for a company. I'm going to open the stock market on my phone right now. I'm going to open my Stockmaster app, and let's see. Right now, currently the S&P is down 0.5% today, and by the end of the day, that'll be different. It might be up 1%, it might be down 2%, it might close at -0.5%, it might not actually change, but these things fluctuate. I look at United Airlines, they're down 8.5%. That sucks. Tesla up 5.8% right now. And these fluctuate every second of the day until 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday when the stock market's open. You can also invest in non-retirement things. Brokerage doesn't have to be retirement. You can also do a 529, which is a college savings plan. So you get interest-free tax-free interest, aka growth there as well. Avoid lifestyle creep, aka, as a famous person once said, no money, no problems. Lifestyle creep is, all right, you're a student. You're maybe making $5,000 a year right now because you're spending most of your time studying in class. And then you get your good engineering job and now you make $50,000 a year. Oh man, I went from $5,000 a year to $50,000 a year. I'm making so much more money. I don't really need to worry about my expenses anymore. I'm going to buy that $100 fancy Wagyu beef steak. And I'm going to buy a $30,000 car. And I'm going to buy a house that's just barely affordable and all this stuff. That's lifestyle creep. And it doesn't have to be that significant. It can be a slower process, but the lifestyle creep is I make a little more so I get to spend a little more. Avoid that. Make a little more and try and spend the same if you want to be financially independent in the long term. Again, I'm not telling you how to dictate your lives. You want to spend every penny you got and then some? Do it. But if you want to have a retirement at some point, if you get a 5% raise, don't spend 5% more of your money. Have some fun. When you go from $5,000 a year to $50,000 a year, treat yourself, as they say in Parks and Rec. Have a little fun, but don't have $45,000 worth of fun. Have $1,000 worth of fun. Have a little fun. Maybe take another $5,000, put it towards retirement. Put it towards the down payment of a home. Something productive, if you want to be financially independent. Because when you put your budget together, whether it's on Excel or one of those a website out there, like everydollar.com or mint.com, and you start realizing, man, I really don't have that much money to play with at the end of each month. I need to be careful with my expenses. And then you start going, oh, well, I should be putting $200 a month to retirement, or $100 a month to retirement, or $500 a month to retirement. Things get tighter quicker in terms of your budget. I wish we had time to get to these examples with all of 60 seconds. We definitely don't. So these are some problems that would apply those formulas we saw on the formula sheet, which was here. So Annuity Calculator, whether it's annually or in times. Now, if you want to try these out, I need to make you aware that you have to deposit on the same interval that you're compounding interest to use these two formulas. Payments needed to achieve a goal. This is just the flip-flop of the last one. So if you know you want to be a millionaire, how much do you need to put away every month? And then this loan payment formula, this is for a car payment or for a mortgage payment. So when we did that mortgage payment website, this is the formula it used. It internally used this formula. Admittedly, the website for annuities do not give the same answer as these formulas because they calculate the interest on the back instead of the front. Don't worry about that, what it means, but the numbers are close. So if you get an A of exactly $1 million using the formula, the website's probably going to say it's like $997 million or maybe $997,000, excuse me, or maybe 1.02 million. It would be close but not exact. So the annuity formulas are close but not exact to what the website would give you. Everything else is exact. And remember, the annuity calculator was right here. So just one last time, let's take the example that we would have done with the formula sheet. Bob wants to retire with $1 million. He can invest into an IRA, and I'm going to take you an extra couple of minutes. Sorry for that, but I'm going to use this time. He can get 9% every year compounding monthly. So he's going to deposit monthly and he's compounding monthly. He's 25 and will retire at 65, which means he gets 40 years to invest. This is pretty common if you start working right after college. And even a couple of years right there of maybe just saving up for a home or something like that, or paying off your credit cards or student loans until we start investing. So 40 years to retire, interest rate of 9%, wants $1 million to retire with. So actually, I take that back. This website does not have a goal in mind. I can't do that one. I need the calculator. And we said we're not going to show it, so we're not going to do that one. Back to this. Let's do this one. Bob can invest $500 monthly into a Roth IRA that compounds monthly. He's 35 and will retire at 65. He's going to get a 6% return. The interest we're not going to worry about. So $500 a month. He's got 30 years and a 6% rate. So 0, starting principal, annual addition of 0, monthly addition of 500. He's going to do some heavy bonds, but still other stuff as well. So he ends up with $489,628 in the end. He put in $180,000 of his own money. He got $310,000 at the end for free. If he had gained 10% interest, so maybe he didn't do any bonds until the last 10 years, so he was investing aggressively and got a more aggressive growth, his $500,000 retirement plan now has $1 million. Invest aggressively while you're young if you want to see the more extreme growth. That's what I'm saying educationally, again, not as advice. All right. So, Chapter 9 homework, you are not responsible for. You can do it. You can check it out. You're more than welcome to. There's a lot of bond math that we didn't get into. There'll be some of the formulas. You'll have to try and practice using them on your own. But again, I will not throw any of that stuff on the test. I'm not saying I can't throw anything from Chapter 9 on the test. I certainly could. It would just be more like what we've discussed. The formula sheets in Canvas, make sure you print it or have that PDF ready for it. Final exams one day only. It'll be ready Wednesday at 12:01 a.m. It is due at 11:59 p.m. I will not hold class on Wednesday, so this is our last discussion. Please go ahead and have your grade submissions ready sooner than later, but you should have until that email due date. So like I said, final grades will be in Monday on SIS because I want to make sure that everyone's turned in that form. And the theory is that you do have an extra day after the final exam or 2 days or something like that to submit the form, even though class is already done. The final exam review, you should study the midterm review that was already given to you, as well as the additional 10, maybe 20 questions I give you for the last half of the course. I'll have that ready by 5 p.m. today. I will shoot you an email. I'm probably just going to put that part in my math lab. Yeah, I will. That was weird. So the chapter 1 through 4 stuff was in Canvas. The chapter 5 through 8 stuff will be in my math lab. So you'll actually be able to input the answers, get to view an example, and help me solve this stuff. I wanted to have additional resources for that one. So again, that'll be shorter. The final exam itself will be ballpark 20 questions. So about 5 points each. All right, so that is it. It has been as much of a pleasure as it could be given the situation. I definitely preferred having everybody in class, but I'm glad that we were able to finish the semester in some way, shape, or form. I hope that you were able to still learn something and take away something from this course. I hope that I've helped you understand how important proportions are in the real world and how they can be used in so many places in a simple way. I hope I've helped you understand financial reasoning a little bit better in this course. And the importance of retiring, the importance of starting young, or if you're not young, the importance of starting now. Because I want you to be financially sound. And again, if you choose not to, or if you just can't, it is what it is. That's all it is. So I have enjoyed our time together. I wish you all the best of luck on this final as well as your others and anything else in whatever life brings you on your journey. So good luck to you. Take care. And again, good luck. I'm going to say it twice. And you're welcome. Enjoy your summer after this.